Every second that ticks by, 700,000 gallons of water gush over Niagara Falls. Jan and I stood on the observation platform a few years ago, just feet from the immense cascade. We donned the free ponchos and watched the unending flow of water thundering nearby, so powerful we could feel the concussions throbbing through our bodies. Later, we rode the Maid of the Mist boat, drenched in the cool fog that rose from the deluge and enveloped us in its coolness. The experience invoked awe, especially from the perspective of a resident who lives in semi-arid West Texas. I'm Larry Payne, your host of Tracks for the Journey, a network dedicated to your well-being. I'm sure you've had a few experiences that have gripped you with awe, amazement, or wonder. The emotion propels us to see the world in a different way. Now, I invite you today to explore with me why awe means so much to our human journey. I'll admit the feeling of awe is rare for me, and maybe it is for you too. And that's not good, because as Dr. Brene Brown writes, awe and wonder are essential to the human experience. Well, what is this emotion? An explosion of research in the past 20 years has identified awe as our positive response to something that is beyond the ordinary, transcending the normal experiences of life, and drawing us into a new awareness of self and the world. When you feel awe and wonder, you're responding to what psychologists call perceived vastness. Somehow, an experience breaks the boundaries of the moment and the everyday. Awe also brings, according to psychologists, a need for accommodation. What we experience demands a new thought or even a paradigm shift to interpret the world in a brand new way. The universal physical reaction is to raise our eyebrows, widen our eyes, open our mouths in exclamation, release happy chemicals across our body, and even feel the tingling in our skin. The legends of the book of Exodus recall the awe of the Hebrews near the foot of Mount Sinai. The amalgamated text, composed centuries later, described an experience that had been told and retold. As the people watched, the mountains shook with earthquakes, and fiery streams of what might be a volcanic eruption rose into the sky. The former slaves cowered in fear and awe around this sacred event. The bursts of magma illuminated the skies for days, covering the land with smoke and heightening the wonder for these people. They felt they had come close to God's living presence that overwhelmed their understanding and were ready to live with new devotion. Many of the great religious sites around the world do invoke awe. From the pyramids of Egypt and the pillars of Stonehenge to the Cathedral of Notre Dame, the common factor is to carry the viewer beyond their own thoughts to something greater. Modern memories can do the same, as anyone who has visited the monuments of Washington, D.C. can attest. I can remember as a 10-year-old when I first looked up at the Washington Monument towering 555 feet above me. I couldn't comprehend how great that was, and it left a lasting impression of awe. The emotion of awe is usually a serendipity encounter, snatching our attention from the common paths of life. In a moment, we break the boundaries of what we expected to find the rush of a new dimension. Cole Arthur Riley offers this word: awe is not a lens through which to see the world, but our sole path to seeing. Any other lens is not a lens, but a veil. And I've come to believe that our beholding, seeing the veils of the world peeled back again and again, if only for a moment, is no small form of salvation. The moment of awe, she writes, alters our consciousness, perhaps bringing a flow state where time and self become different. Viktor Frankel, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust and led the world to new dimensions of meaning, wrote of his experience. He said, "One day, a few days after my liberation from the camp, I walked through the country past flowering meadows for miles and miles toward the market town near the camp. Larks rose to the sky and I could hear their joyous song. There was no one to be seen for miles around. There was nothing but the wide earth and sky and the lark's jubilee and the freedom of space. I stopped, looked around, and looked up at the sky and then went down on my knees. At that moment there was very little I knew of myself or of the world. I had but one sentence in mind, always the same, repeating, 'I called to the Lord from my narrow prison, and he answered in the freedom of space.' How long I went there and repeated that sentence kneeling, I no longer can recall. But I know that on that day, in that hour, my new life started. Step for step, I progressed until again I became a human being." Process theology offers the teaching that every moment possesses a mental and physical reality, inseparable and combined. Our brains would show electrical activity on the MRI screen, but there is more to our consciousness than just that. In each moment of experience, process theology says we're influenced by our past, our unique self, and the possibilities of the future. In each of these instances, there are initial aims that lure us forward toward the best, originated by the divine source of creative possibilities. We could propose, for example, that the sight of sunlight glinting on a blue mountaintop lake contains sensory perceptions, our entire bank of memories, our identity, and a connection with God that lures us to something new. Should we respond to this divine lure, the result of this is a divine and human collaboration that could be a paradigm-shifting emotional jolt of awe. What should we do with our experiences of awe? Well, perhaps the better question is, what does awe do with us? Dr. Summer Allen, in her report, The Science of Awe, recounts the powerful effects of this emotion. Studies have shown we may feel a greater sense of well-being, more connection to others, diminished materialism, new perspective on life, and deepened spirituality. If we allow it, awe can become a path to a more meaningful mindset and positive behaviors. The awe, the mother, holding that newborn against her, provokes maternal love that changes everything about her life. The listening to the lament of an indigenous song may bring commitment to seek justice in politics. Sitting in the swelling surf of a ceaseless waves beside a vast ocean can bring a paradigm shift from selfish individuality to universal oneness. Scientists Mornay and Kettner certainly have it right when they say awe is a pathway to mental and physical health. Returning to the ideas of Cole Arthur Riley, we find a path for this creative and transforming emotion. She writes, "I think awe is an exercise, both a doing and a being. It is a spiritual muscle of our humanity that we can only keep from atrophying if we exercise it habitually. My faith is held together by wonder, by every defiant commitment to presence and paying attention." Presence and paying attention. That's her formula that all of us can follow. To practice presence is to embrace the fullness of who we are in the moment, not rushing from this experience to another. The faster we work, the less we can be present to the singular moment that is out of the ordinary. The father who is focused on his football game is not able to be fully present to that child whose personality is being formed during every one of those Saturday afternoons. Riley also encourages us to pay attention. To me, this means engaging in the depth of the experience. We can cultivate a deeper perception. We can engage, for example, with the flower blossoming as a product of millions of years of evolution, engorged with dynamic cellular activity and offering itself to the care and growth of the ecosystem. Awe comprehends that. The tender touch of a stranger holding the victim of a crime exhibits a solidarity and compassion unknown anywhere else in the universe. Awe comprehends this. Jan and I recently visited Yellowstone Park. Like millions of others, we made a stop to watch the Old Faithful geyser. Standing with about 1,000 other spectators, we waited eagerly for the eruption. And right on schedule, the geyser erupted with a monstrous roar, blowing steam and water 200 feet in the air. The crowd in one great chorus let out oohs and ahs at the amazing sight. The exclamation offered a spontaneous, delightful expression of awe in this moment of natural wonder. God lured our minds toward more profound thoughts. The rushing torrent seemed to enact the immensity of the planet and inspire reflection on the constancy of God's love. In this moment of reflection, awe invoked and provoked an experience of our minds and our souls. Awe is indeed the emotion of transcendence. I hope someday soon you'll be struck by awe to a greater well-being on your journey. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Tracks for the Journey. I invite you to find the link to many other resources and subscribe to the newsletter by going to my website, www.tracksforthejourney.com. Thanks for joining me.